Welcome back to my YouTube channel, ladies and gents. We are back with whether or not the sacrifice at the Mass is a propitiatory sacrifice. This is a debate between Dr. James White and Joe Heschmeyer from Shameless Popery. If you guys haven't watched the last four, I highly suggest you're going to watch those. That way you can catch up. But for today, we are going to be going over Joe's cross-examination of Dr. James. And boy, does it go a little left field. This one was a good one. I'm not going to waste your time. Let's get into it.
You want to begin? I guess that's the first question. So I guess we're starting. Let's start with Hebrews, because that's obviously the crux of your argument. Is it fair to say that your view is that Christ's sacrificial work is completed in its entirety on Good Friday?
It is my view, and I did not get a chance to develop this, that the offering takes place upon the cross, and then the fulfillment of the high priest parallel that is provided from 7 through 10 includes the sprinkling of the blood upon the altar and the work of intercession. That's what I read, Hebrews 7:25, which specifically says, because he ever lives to make intercession for
Great.
us.
So something.
One thing I want to note, the reason why Dr. James White wasn't able to further develop his point was because in part 4, I highly suggest you going to watch that. He'd spent most of his time trying to disprove the priesthood. The reason he did that was because by disproving the priesthood, not only does he win this debate, because it had been agreed upon that earlier in the debate that in order for the bread and the wine to turn into the body and blood of Jesus Christ, you need a sacramental priest, somebody ordained by the church. By disproving the authority that the church has, everything else falls apart about Catholicism. Reconciliation, holy orders, transubstantiation, which is the sacrifice at the Mass, effectively everything we believe falls apart. Unfortunately for him, Joe wasn't going to let that slide.
It has to happen after Good Friday. Is that fair?
It is not a separate work, because when we see Jesus in heaven, in Revelation chapter 5, the Lamb standing as if slain. So it is the completedness of the sacrifice that is seen in the Lamb. So
Okay,
it's not,
so it's not a separate
addition.
sacrifice. So far, we're on the same page, it sounds like. But there's something
Maybe.
after Good Friday.
We'll find out here in a second if
Yeah,
we really are.
but I mean, it sounds like you can at least say, because I often hear Reformed people say, oh, when Jesus says it is finished, that means the sacrificial work is done. And if I understand you correctly, you realize that can't be true in light of Hebrews.
No, the sacrificial work is done.
Is an offering part of the sacrifice?
But the union of the elect with Christ and his intercession for them is not only something that is seen in Christ entering into the holy place, the right hand of the Father, but then temporally we experience that in time long after that.
Okay, so Christ continues to act in a priestly role for us.
In the sense of he is resurrected and bears in his body the marks of death and the victory over that death.
And also interceding, though, right? Didn't you just say?
Right.
And didn't you say in your talk that this is the same work as his sacrificial work?
That's what the high priest in Leviticus
Wonderful.
chapter 16
So he's
did.
continuing the sacrificial work even now in heaven. Is that fair to say?
It is a completed work that is presented before the Father.
Okay. So it still has to be applied. And he's applying it on the heavenly side in an ongoing, I think you would use the term iterative manner in heaven.
Interesting that this came up last evening too. We're touching on the difference between the eternal and the temporal. So in Romans chapter 8, it's said that we are already glorified.
Okay.
But we do not yet experience that. So that is something that we will experience after this life. But the reality of it is already completed, just as the reality of the sacrifice is completed in the giving of the perfect life of the Son of God.
Okay, so let's turn to Hebrews 9.
One thing to keep in mind, earlier if we scroll back, when he said Christ's sacrifice on the cross was complete, notice the addition that he added. Him offering himself was complete as well. So when we go to Mass and we offer the bread and the blood to the Father, transubstantiation, effectively participating in that one sacrifice that occurred on the cross, That's meaningless to Dr. James. Why? It's meaningless because all that was complete at the cross. That's what he effectively said. Joe's trying to differentiate between Jesus dying on the cross and him offering himself to the Father, because by differentiating those two, he begins to pull apart Dr. James' argument, which boils down to the temporal timeline. If the sacrifice is one thing, how can it be, or how can you say that he offered himself at the same time when he hadn't yet presented himself to the Father? And this is what we're about to see.
Could you read 15 to 17? Actually, I'm sorry. Could you read 24 to 25 first? I know I'm jumping a little bit out of order here.
I'm assuming for Christ, you want to start there?
Yeah, please.
For Christ did not enter holy places, made with hands, mere copies of the true ones, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. You want to go through how far?
Through 25.
Nor was it that he would offer himself often as the high priest enters the holy places year by year with blood that is not his own.
Okay, so what is that an allusion to in the Jewish life?
Leviticus chapter 16.
Right, Yom Kippur, right? Like the Day of
Yom
Atonement.
Kippurim.
Sure.
Well, no, I
mean, yeah,
think
no, that's a plural.
it's
That's
important
fair.
because the high priest
That's
had
fine.
to offer sacrifice for himself before he then offered the sacrifice for
That's
the people.
great. No, I think this is wonderful because this gets right to the heart of it. Because what happened repeatedly was the presentation by the priest of the sacrificial offering on every Yom Kippur,
Yeah.
year after year after year. And when does it say Jesus does that here in Hebrews?
When does it say Jesus does
When does he
what?
fulfill what Yom Kippur prefigured?
On the cross.
Read it again. When Christ.
Back to what I was saying earlier. For him, Jesus offering himself up was on the cross. It wasn't after the cross, after the resurrection. It was at the death. That's a very important distinction that we all need to keep in mind, because that's the contrast between the two sides.
entered into where?
Well, yeah, he
Entered heaven itself. Did that happen on Good Friday?
No, it didn't happen on Good
Okay,
Friday
so 43 days later.
he rises from the dead and then ministers to his disciples.
When does he enter into the holy place in verse 24?
Well, there's question about that because there's statements that Jesus makes even after the resurrection. We don't know exactly what happens during the time between the crucifixion
okay, what does
and
he
when
tell
he
Mary
sees.
Magdalene when she tries to touch him?
I have not yet ascended my Father.
Exactly. So it had to happen not on Good Friday. So we can't say Hebrews 9 is a reference to Christ doing the once-for-all sacrifice and is all completed on Good Friday. Is that fair?
No,
Because he hasn't
I
done
don't
what
think
verse
it's fair
24
because the term "offer himself often" is the controlling phrase.
Okay.
Because that's he's contrasting. Nor was it he would offer himself often is
Okay.
the contrast to as the high priest enters the holy places year by year.
So there's these two aspects. You got the killing of the lamb, suffering and death. That's not repeated. But then you also have the offertory aspect, right?
Are you talking about offering as in something separate than the death?
Yes.
Okay.
Like just killing an animal isn't automatically a sacrifice. Is that right?
The high priest takes the blood and sprinkles it on the mercy seat,
Which is
right.
distinct from the death, right?
It is one
It's a
work.
separate liturgical
If the
action.
high priest did not go into the holy place, he has not fulfilled his work.
Correct.
So since
And Christ doesn't do that on Good Friday, though, right?
So since Christ is the great high priest, then he fulfills that work, but not in not limited to just simply the old what's the terms used here, type and shadow type thing. So that's why there can be the establishment of the
I'm trying to
church,
figure
the
out,
training of the
are
people.
you saying
things
that
like that
Christ does the priestly work of entering the holy place on Good Friday or at a later point?
No, I'm saying that the work of intercession and the presentation of the finished work goes beyond the types and shadows.
Okay, but
Because
what
he's
my
not
question-
offering the blood of goats and bulls. He's offering his own blood. And therefore, when he enters into the holy place, which the high priest could not stay in the holy place, we are now breaking the categories of
So
the
he
old
goes in the
covenant
holy
with
place
the new
and
covenant.
sits down, right? And what is that a
Right,
reference
and there's no
to?
place to sit
No,
down.
I'm saying Christ, not the high priest. Like the high priest of old entered every year, couldn't stay in, had to leave.
Yeah, because there's no place to
Christ
sit.
comes in and sits down. Is that
Right,
right?
he's at the right hand of God
When does that happen?
at his ascension.
Okay,
Daniel
great.
7.
So there's still a part of the sacrifice that is not completed on Good Friday.
Notice he doesn't want to concede that Christ going up to heaven and offering himself, kind of like the parallels you see in the Old Testament with the Jewish traditions, that's a completely separate event. He doesn't want to concede that. What he effectively said was, oh, when Jesus did that, that was a completely new thing. All the parallels that you guys claim to be able to see with the Old Testament and history, Jewish tradition, we've got the breaking of categories, which means new things are forming.
No, I believe that it is completed, and it's the presentation of that finished work that is what brings perfection to us.
But if this is the version of Yom Kippur fulfilled, how is that hasn't happened yet until he ascends into heaven? How can you say it's completed when he has not gone into the holy place that Hebrews 9 describes as being the...
Because it's his offering. That offering takes place upon the cross of Calvary. That takes place in history. The presence of the Lamb before the Father today is not an addition to what he did. It is the reality that the God-man has given his life, and since we are united with him, then he becomes the surety that we have in the very presence of God. And that then becomes the contrast between the repetitive sacrifices of Hebrews 10 and the anamnesis of sins versus the anamnesis we have of a sin bearer.
Okay, so how about in Hebrews 7? That's the other passage.
We can go backwards if you want to.
I know, I'm jumping. I'm going to go to the middle in a minute here.
And correct me if I'm wrong. The fact that he's conflating the sacrifice with the offering, I think in his mind, when we offer Christ, or when the priest says the words during the Mass, he thinks we as Catholics are re-sacrificing Jesus Christ, if that makes sense. He's keeping those two events the same. He doesn't want to separate them, which means if we're doing one, we have to, by definition, be doing the other.
And Hebrews 7:26, when it talks about Christ as high priest, exalted above the heavens. Can we agree that's also a reference to his ascension and not to Good Friday?
Well, for it was fitting for us to have such a high priest, holy, innocent, undefiled, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens. Well,
Is he exalted above the heavens before the ascension?
Well, he was before the incarnation. He's always been holy, innocent, undefiled, separated, so on and so forth. But it says, who does not need daily, like those high priests, to offer up sacrifices.
Correct.
So why? Because he is ascended and the work is completed.
Okay, so when is the work completed in your view?
I thought we've gone over this.
Well, I'm trying to make, because Hebrews 7 just said after he is ascended into heaven, seemingly, and it sounds like you're still saying Good Friday.
No, but again, how is it in preceding context, how is it he is able to save forever those who draw near to God through him? Because he always lives to make intercession for them.
Yeah.
His priesthood is a continuingly valid priesthood. It is finished. It is completed. And the reason that we can talk about his intercession today is not because that is something lacking, but it is the natural result of that obedience that he shows the Father, that Philippians chapter 2 tells us is the basis upon which the Father exalts the Son in the first place.
Okay, so I guess I'm trying to understand. Is he still operating in a priestly capacity when he goes into heaven and presents the offering that he made on Good Friday?
As the finished sacrifice, as
but there's
the
some
Lamb standing as if slain.
Okay.
It's not something lacking in the offering. It is the finishedness of it that the description in Hebrews chapter 6 is the anchor that goes into the holy place. That is the foundation we have, is because he has gone in there. He represents us. It's not like he has to add something to what he's already done. It's a completed and finished thing.
Okay, let's go to Hebrews 9, verse 18. Like I said, we're jumping around in the middle now.
We are.
All right, when it says...
Well, wait a minute, we were just in...
Yeah, we were in Hebrews 9, that's right, but we were after that. We were in 24. Now we're going
You're
back
reading
6
in the
verses.
same order that Harold Camping used to use.
Yes, exactly. I got that reference. All right.
You're old enough to get that
I know.
reference.
It's not the end of the world. That's a camping reference, and it's going to be lost on 99% of people. All right.
Isn't that
Hebrews
amazing?
9,
That was only a
verse
few
18.
years ago.
I know. That even the first covenant was not ratified without blood. In Hebrews 9, 18 to 22, what event in the Old Testament is being referenced?
Well, Moses and the establishment of the covenant by the sacrifice and the blood on the hyssop and sprinkling the book.
So, but is it fair to say that it's not just that the animals were killed, it's also that the blood was applied?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's go back to that in Exodus 24. I know, we're jumping. This is a full Bible. In Exodus 24, verse 6, Moses takes half of the blood of the animals and he puts it on the people and half on the altar. How do you understand the bloodshed there?
And this is why it's important to use your whole Bible when you're studying the Bible. You don't just pick one Bible verse. We see this time and time again. Many people like to pick one Bible verse and try and interpret that in such a way that it completely violates what the Bible teaches.
Well, again, this is the establishment of the covenantal language. It's the beginning of the types and shadows. Behold, the blood of the covenant which Yahweh has cut with you in accordance with all these words. So,
okay, so could we agree that that's really a critical moment for the creation of the first covenant?
yes.
Okay, great. What language? I mean, so this is the blood of the covenant. When do we find Jesus saying that?
When he speaks of his coming sacrifice on the night of his betrayal.
So when Moses is doing it, does he have just a symbol of blood or does he have real blood?
Well, he has animal blood.
Okay. And he actually creates a new covenant.
Moses or Jesus?
Moses in Exodus 24 here.
Well, it's not called the new covenant. It's the covenant. He does.
I
what,
said actually creates
he
a
does
covenant,
what
not the new covenant.
he does what God has commanded him to do. Yes.
Does he create a covenant when he performs all the actions he's been commanded to by God?
Actually, God created the covenant because that's what it says right there, which Yahweh has cut with you.
Okay, sure.
So God's the one.
But this action is the way God acting
Moses
through
is
this
being
priestly
obedient
role
to
of
God's
Moses,
command.
if
Yes.
you will.
You, just you, building your app on Base 44. Describe it.
How do you make sense of that in light of the parallel to,
And yes.
if you will? How do you make sense of that in light of the parallel to the New Testament? The only time Jesus mentions covenant at all in his ministry is when he lifts the chalice and says, this is the covenant in his blood, which sounds remarkably like the language in Exodus 24, and even more remarkably in Hebrews 9, when the author of Hebrews blends the language of the two together, if you look carefully at 15 to 17.
When you say, how do I?
Well, yeah, I mean, if Moses is inaugurating the covenant with the this is my blood, or this is the blood, excuse me, this is the blood of the covenant, it sounds like you see that as an actual inaugural covenantal event. But when Jesus does it, even though Hebrews says that the old things are prefigurements of new and better things, when Jesus does it, it doesn't inaugurate a covenant. It's not real blood. Is that fair to say? The Last Supper, when Jesus says, this is the blood of the covenant, it's not the blood of his covenant?
Anyone who's familiar with the Passover supper knows that everything on the table represented something in the history of Israel. And that's what Jesus is saying. He's saying, this is my body, this is my blood. That does not require transubstantiation. It does require an understanding
But when
of
Moses
the establishment
says that it's the blood of the covenant, it really is, and when Jesus says it isn't?
No, it's not a matter of it isn't. It is the absolute certainty that Jesus is about to give his life upon the cross of Calvary.
Is it his blood or not?
No, it's not.
Okay, so when I said Moses said it's the blood,
And they never
Jesus said
would
it's
have
blood,
even
it's not.
dreamed it. Nobody in that room would have ever understood those words in that way.
Did anybody in the room in Exodus 24 think it was really the blood of the covenant?
That is massive anachronism. It truly is. And yes, they did. When Jesus opened their minds to understand the Scripture after his resurrection, most definitely they did. But the reality is, if you're saying,
hang on, I got one final question. I only have 40 seconds. In Exodus 24, after this is the blood of the covenant language, go down to verse 9, and Moses and then all the priests and the elders of Israel, Aaron and Nadab and Abihu, who are the priests, and the elders of Israel, it says they saw the God of Israel and they ate and drank, right? Do you see in that a parallel to the Last Supper and the eating and drinking, or is that a coincidence?
Well, eating and drinking is often associated with the establishment of a covenant.
That's right. So when Christ establishes a covenant, or says he's establishing a covenant at the Last Supper and they eat and drink, is a covenant being established there and then at the Last Supper, or will the covenant not be established until the next day?
Well, when you say the covenant is being established, again, this is the same situation. I know we're out of time, but I need to be able to have an opportunity to answer the question that's been asked. This is the same situation we have in Romans chapter 8 that I mentioned earlier. The scriptures describe us as being foreknown, predestined, called, justified, and glorified. Those are all past tense actions, but we have not yet been glorified. Right. So there is, when God does things, the certainty of those things transcends our little time frame. Yeah. And so what happens in the establishment of the supper can only be understood in light of what's going to happen on the cross, which the disciples could not comprehend at that point in time.
All right. Thank you so much.
And there you guys have it. Just one thing I want to draw your attention to. Unless you eat my body and drink my blood, you have no life in you. I don't think that was figuratively, symbolically, metaphorically, analogically. I can keep going. That was literally. And that was a very good discrepancy that Joe pointed out. In the Old Testament, the blood, when the blood was sprinkled, that's the blood of the covenant. Even at the Last Supper, when Jesus tells the disciples, "This is my blood," he's creating the covenant right there. But hey, I'm just a regular guy who's analyzed. I think it's clear as day. But ladies and gents, let me know what you think. I'm trying to see it from Dr. James White's perspective, but I'm struggling. Somebody please enlighten me in the comments section. I would greatly appreciate it. We'll see how things go in the next few parts. God bless you guys. Drop a like and subscribe.